A black cowgirl is blocked at the rodeo registration until she shows a photo that makes the organizer freeze. The man behind the counter, Ricardo, looked her up and down. His leather vest was new, his belt buckle big and shiny. He represented everything new and commercial about the rodeo. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, his voice dripping with poorly disguised contempt. "I'm here to register for the roping competition," Anna said, her voice calm and steady. The dust from a long road was settled on her boots, and her hands, calloused from years of holding reins, rested on the wooden counter. Ricardo let out a short laugh. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this is the professional division. The amateur competition was yesterday." He gestured toward the loud arena outside. "The level here is different. This is no place for hobbyists." Anna's face remained blank. She was used to that look. The look that measured her by her age, by the color of her skin, and not by the strength in her arms. "I understand the level," she replied simply. "I want to register. Look, I don't want to be rude, but we can't just let anyone enter. It would damage the event's reputation," Ricardo said, now speaking as if he were explaining something to a child. He leaned forward. "Maybe you'd like to watch from the stands." That's when Anna slowly reached into the inside pocket of her jacket. She didn't pull out a wallet. She pulled out an old photograph, faded and creased at the edges. She placed it on the counter. The photo showed an older, smiling man with his arm around a much younger version of Anna. The man was a legend in the rodeo world. He was also Ricardo's father, the founder of the entire event. The look on Ricardo's face shifted from arrogance to pure shock. He turned pale, speechless. The injustice Anna was facing is something many people know all too well. If you believe respect should come before judgment, comment respect below and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss Anna's revenge. She watched him silently for a moment, letting his shock sink in. Her quest for one last moment of glory had brought her back to a place that held more secrets than she imagined. Secrets that could destroy reputations built on lies. What did the man in the photo do that gave Anna so much power over his son? Ricardo's face was a mask of cold fury. He snatched the photograph from the counter, his hand trembling slightly. Without another word, he stamped Anna's registration form and shoved it toward her. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask any questions. He just gave her a number, 47, the last one in the lineup. A spot designed for the forgotten, the ones the audience would barely see. "The pre-competition briefing is in 1 hour. Don't be late," he said, his voice flat and hostile. He refused to look her in the eye again. Anna took the form and her number, giving him a slow, deliberate nod. She turned and walked away from the registration booth, leaving Ricardo stewing in a silence that was heavier than any shout. As she stepped into the main grounds, the familiar sounds and smells hit her. The roar of the crowd, the scent of hay and dirt, the lowing of cattle in their pens. But it was different from how she remembered. Big, flashy banners for Titan trucks and Stallion energy drinks hung everywhere, covering the old painted wood she recalled. The cowboys were younger, swaggering with an arrogance born from social media fame, not from years of hard work. They looked at her like she was a ghost, a relic from a museum who had wandered into their shiny new world. She ignored their stares and made her way toward the stables, her worn leather bag slung over her shoulder. Her steps were confident, her purpose clear. Inside, an old stable hand named Miguel was brushing down a nervous-looking horse. He was weathered and wiry, one of the few faces she recognized. He paused, his eyes squinting. "Ana?" he whispered, his voice raspy. "Ana Flores? By God, I thought you'd vanished." "Not yet, Miguel," she said, a small, rare smile touching her lips. "Still have a few loops left in me." Miguel looked from her toward the main office. "This place has changed, Ana. It's not what his father built. It's all about money now." He lowered his voice. "Be careful. Ricardo has a nasty temper and a very long memory for anyone connected to his father's time." "I'm counting on it," Ana replied softly. Meanwhile, back in the office, Ricardo threw Anna's form on his desk. His assistant, a nervous young man, watched him warily. "Get me the livestock roster for the roping event," Ricardo snapped. "Yes, sir. Any specific one?" Ricardo looked out the window, his eyes scanning the powerful bulls in the far pens. A cruel smile formed on his face. "Give her Diablo, the one that put 2 riders in the hospital last season." His motivation was clear. If she wanted to be a part of his rodeo, he would make her regret ever showing him that photograph. He wouldn't just defeat her, he would erase her. The pre-competition briefing was held in a dusty, crowded tent. Ricardo stood on a small platform, outlining the rules with a sharp, commanding voice. He spoke about professionalism, about the brand of the rodeo, about putting on a good show. His eyes swept across the faces of the young, ambitious cowboys, but he never once looked in Anna's direction. She stood at the back, silent and observant, a ghost among the vibrant, eager new generation. After the speech, an assistant pinned a large sheet of paper to a wooden board. It was the roster, the list of riders and their assigned animals. A low murmur rippled through the crowd as the cowboys pushed forward to find their names. Anna waited for the crowd to thin before she approached. She ran her finger down the list. There it was. Rider, J47, Ana Flores. Animal, Diablo. A few younger cowboys who were still lingering saw it. One of them let out a disbelieving laugh. "He's giving the old woman Diablo," he said to his friend, not bothering to lower his voice. "That's not a competition, that's an execution. She won't even make it out of the chute," the other one snickered. What's Ricardo thinking? The name Diablo was a legend in its own right. He wasn't just a bull, he was a force of nature, known for his explosive rage and an intelligent cruelty that seemed almost human. He didn't just throw riders, he hunted them. Just then, Miguel hurried to her side, his face pale with worry. "Anna, you saw it. This is a setup. It's a message from Ricardo. He's trying to scare you off, or worse. No one has successfully roped that bull this season. He's dangerous." "I know who Diablo is, Miguel," Anna said, her voice unnervingly calm. She folded her arms, her gaze fixed on the name next to hers. There was no fear in her eyes, only a sharp, intense focus, a spark of calculation. She left Miguel standing there and walked toward the high-fenced pens at the edge of the grounds, the place where they kept the most difficult animals. The other cowboys watched her go, shaking their heads with a mix of pity and scorn. There he was. Diablo was bigger than the other bulls, his hide a dark, dusty black, his muscles coiled like powerful springs. He wasn't rampaging. He was standing perfectly still, watching the world with intelligent, malevolent eyes. When his gaze met Anna's, he let out a low, guttural snort and scraped a hoof against the hard-packed dirt. It was a direct challenge. Anna didn't flinch. She remembered a lesson from long ago, from the man in the photograph. "Every animal has a secret," Ricardo's father had told her, "a weakness. They'll show it to you if you're smart enough to look." She saw it then. A tiny, almost imperceptible hesitation in the way Diablo shifted his weight to his left rear leg. It was a flicker of an old injury. It was a secret, and it was all she needed. While Anna studied her opponent, Ricardo was in his office, staring at a spreadsheet on his computer. The numbers were glowing red. Ticket sales were down 15% from last year. His biggest sponsor, Titan Trucks, had sent him an email that morning. They needed a viral moment from the event, or they would reconsider their partnership for next season. He was on the edge of financial ruin, and the legacy his father had built was about to crumble into dust and debt. His desperate move to put Anna against Diablo wasn't just personal cruelty. It was a calculated, high-risk gamble. A mysterious old woman facing down the most feared bull in the circuit. People would talk. It would create buzz. If she failed spectacularly, it was a story. If by some impossible miracle she succeeded, it was an even bigger one. He didn't care which, as long as people were watching. His assistant knocked and entered, holding a tablet. "Sir, the insurance underwriters are asking for confirmation on the rider for Diablo. They say the liability is—" "I'll handle the liability," Ricardo cut him off, his voice sharp. "Is the camera crew ready?" "Yes, sir. We've assigned 2 extra cameras to shoot number 3 like you asked." "Good," Ricardo said, turning back to the window overlooking the arena. "Make sure they get a clear shot. A shot of her triumph or her failure. Either way, he planned to profit from it." Meanwhile, in the quiet shade behind the stables, Miguel approached Anna. He wasn't empty-handed. He carried a coiled rope, its leather worn smooth and dark with age but perfectly maintained. It was her old rope. "I kept it," Miguel said, holding it out to her. "Figured you might need it again someday." Anna took it, the familiar weight settling in her hands. It felt like an extension of her own arm. "He's in trouble, isn't he?" she asked, her eyes not leaving the rope. "The rodeo." Miguel nodded grimly. "Worse than anyone knows. His father built this place on respect and a handshake. Ricardo built it on bank loans and corporate sponsors. He's drowning Anna. That prize money for the main event. He's counting on one of his flashy new stars to win it, to keep the sponsors happy. Suddenly the picture was complete. This wasn't just about old grudges or disrespect. It was about money. Ricardo was leveraging his father's past, and her life, to save his own failing future. The sun was beginning to set, and the massive stadium lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the grounds. The competition was only a couple of hours away. Holding her old rope, Anna now understood everything. Her quest was no longer just for personal pride. It was about reclaiming a legacy that Ricardo was twisting into a cheap spectacle, and the prize money was no longer just a prize. It was a weapon. The stadium lights glared down, turning the dirt arena into a stage. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers, a mix of confusion and condescension. And now, coming out of chute number 3, rider number 47, Ana Flores. A scattered, polite applause rippled through the audience. Most people just looked confused. Some of the younger cowboys near the rails openly snickered. From his VIP box high above the arena, Ricardo watched with a confident smirk. His cameras were in position. He was about to get his viral moment. One way or another, the old woman's story would end here. Anna walked to the chute, her steps measured and calm. She ignored the crowd. She ignored the announcer. She was in a bubble of pure focus. As she climbed the rails and lowered herself toward the massive bull, the sheer power of the animal was terrifying. Diablo thrashed against the metal gate, the sound echoing like a hammer blow. The chute operators struggled to keep him steady. They looked at Anna with pity, as if she were a lamb being led to slaughter. She settled onto Diablo's back, her hands finding their grip. She wasn't fighting him. She was feeling his rhythm, the coil and release of his powerful muscles. She leaned close to his ear, whispering something no one could hear. The gate operator, seeing her nod, pulled the lever. The gate flew open. What followed was not the instant chaos everyone expected. Instead of a wild bucking, Diablo exploded forward in a ferocious spin to the left, his signature move, the one designed to disorient and unseat a rider in the first 2 seconds. But Anna was ready for it. She didn't resist. She moved with him, using his own savage momentum to steady her seat. The crowd gasped. Ricardo leaned forward in his box, his smirk vanishing. Diablo, enraged that his first trick failed, switched tactics. He bucked violently, aiming to throw her high into the air. But again, Anna anticipated it. She wasn't just a passenger. She was a pilot in a storm. She subtly shifted her weight, pressing her knee into the side where she'd seen his old injury. For a split second, the bull's rhythm faltered. That was the opening. In that heartbeat of a moment, Anna let go with one hand and grabbed her old weathered rope. She didn't swing it in wide, conventional circles. She used a short, compact motion, a flick of the wrist that was impossibly fast. The loop shot out, not in a round O shape, but as a tight, narrow ellipse. It was a technique no one in the arena had ever seen before. It sailed through the air and landed perfectly around Diablo's horns. The timing was flawless. A wave of stunned silence washed over the entire stadium. Then the timer flashed on the giant screen. 8.2 seconds. It wasn't just a success. It was a new arena record. The silence was shattered by a roar from the crowd, a sound of pure disbelief and admiration. But the true turning point wasn't the record. Down by the rails, Miguel's eyes were wide with shock. "The Flores twist," he breathed. "It's real. I thought it was just a story his father used to tell." And in the stands, a well-dressed man in a suit stood up. He wasn't a sponsor or a local fan. He was an official from the World Rodeo League, there to scout for new talent. He turned to his colleague, his face electric with excitement. "Did you see that? That wasn't just a ride, that was history, that was artistry." Ricardo saw it all. His plan had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. He had wanted a memorable moment to save his failing business. He got one. But it wasn't a story of a tragic failure. It was the story of a living legend reclaiming her throne. The attention he desperately wanted was now coming, but it wasn't for his shiny brand. It was for her. And the World Rodeo League official was now walking down toward the judges' table, his expression serious. Ricardo's rodeo was no longer his own. The power had just shifted completely. The roar of the crowd was a physical force. Anna, on her feet in the center of the arena, calmly coiled her legendary rope. The paramedics who had been poised to scrape her off the dirt stood by, useless and amazed. She hadn't just won, she had dominated. She had made the impossible look easy. In his VIP box, Ricardo watched the scene unfold with a sense of dread. The World Rodeo League official, Mr. Davies, was at the judges' table, speaking with authority and pointing back at Anna. Ricardo's phone began to vibrate violently on the table, the screen flashing the name of his chief sponsor, Titan Trucks. He ignored it. His assistant burst into the box, his face pale. "Sir, it's the sponsors. They're not angry." He swallowed hard. "They're ecstatic. They want to bypass the event's standard contract. They want to sponsor her directly. They're talking about a Legends campaign." The irony was a punch to the gut. The viral moment he engineered to save himself had worked too well, creating a star so bright it cast him completely into shadow. Down below, the media swarmed Anna as she tried to exit the arena. Microphones and cameras were shoved in her face. Before she could be overwhelmed, Mr. Davies and two event officials intercepted her, creating a protective barrier. "Ms. Flores, I'm Marcus Davies," the league official said, his voice cutting through the noise. "On behalf of the World Rodeo League, that was breathtaking. The Flores twist. It's a thing of myth. We need to talk." Suddenly, Ricardo was there, pushing his way through the reporters, his face a mask of rage. "All right, that's enough. Give the rider some space," he shouted, trying to reassert his authority. "This is my event." Mr. Davies turned to him, his friendly demeanor gone, replaced by a cold, professional steel. "For the moment, it is," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "But an event of this profile is now under league scrutiny, and the first thing we'll be scrutinizing is why you assigned your most dangerous animal to a senior rider. We will require full access to your records." Ricardo froze. The consequences of his gamble were becoming clear. He hadn't just lost control of the narrative, he had invited a full-scale investigation into his own house. The hunter had just become the prey. The next morning, the roar of the crowd was replaced by the quiet, air-conditioned hum of a hotel conference room. The chaos of the arena had morphed into a new kind of battleground, one with polished tables and bottled water. On one side sat the executives from Titan Trucks and Mr. Davies from the World Rodeo League. On the other sat Anna, with Miguel by her side for support. The executives laid out their offers. They spoke of multi-year contracts, of signature branding, of a television series based on her life. They saw her as a product to be packaged and sold, a heartwarming story of an underdog. They wanted to own her legend. For the first 10 minutes, Anna remained completely silent, listening to the flurry of corporate jargon. Miguel shifted nervously beside her, worried she was being overwhelmed. The main executive, seeing her silence as a sign of simple confusion, smiled condescendingly. "It's a lot to take in, we know. We can have our lawyers simplify the—" "My story is not for sale," Anna said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room with the force of a whip crack. The executives stopped talking. They stared at her, suddenly seeing not an old woman but a commander. This was her growth, visible and undeniable. She was no longer just reacting to the world, she was imposing her will upon it. "But we are prepared to offer—" one of them started. "You want a partnership?" Anna continued, leaning forward slightly. "Then this is how it works. The prize money from last night, which Mr. Ricardo has yet to pay, will be the first deposit into a new foundation. It will support young riders who have the talent, but not the right look or the right last name. Titan Trucks can be its first official sponsor. That's the story you can tell." She then turned her gaze to Mr. Davies. "And the league's investigation. I don't want it handled behind closed doors. The findings must be made public. Everyone should know how Ricardo has been running his father's rodeo." The men in the room were silent. Their expressions shifted from predatory to deep respect. Anna had overcome the initial shock of her own victory and the temptation of personal wealth. She was no longer just a rider seeking revenge. She had grown into a leader, dictating the terms of justice and ensuring that her victory would pave the way for others. The decisions made in the hotel conference room sent shockwaves through the rodeo grounds. News of the Ana Flores Foundation, backed by Titan Trucks, spread like wildfire. Mr. Davies formally served Ricardo's office with a notice of a public investigation by the League. The sponsors had their new hero. The authorities had their new cause. The secondary plot of Ricardo's financial survival was over. He had lost. Ricardo sat alone in his office, the same office from which he had once looked down on the world. On a web page, a picture of Anna shaking hands with the Titan Truck's CEO was the top story. He read the headline, "Rodeo legend Ana Flores creates foundation to uphold true spirit of the sport." They were calling her a legend, and him, implicitly, a disgrace. His assistant entered without knocking, his face grim. "Sir, the bank just called. Citing the league investigation, they're freezing the Rodeo's line of credit." He paused. We can't make payroll. We can't even pay out Ms. Flores's prize money." It was the final nail in the coffin. He was ruined. The empire his father built, and which he had tried to reshape in his own image, was gone. A quiet, terrifying calm settled over Ricardo. The fear was gone, replaced by a hollow emptiness. He had nothing left to lose. He stood up, walked to a small table behind his desk, and picked up a silver picture frame. It was a photo of him and his father, taken years ago at this very rodeo. He stared at it for a moment, then turned and walked out of the office. He moved with a grim purpose, ignoring the worried calls of his staff. He crossed the grounds, now dotted with news vans and reporters, and headed straight for the stables. The air was tense, the atmosphere charged. Ana was in the stable aisle, speaking quietly with Miguel and feeding a sugar cube to the horse she would have ridden if she hadn't drawn Diablo. She looked up, sensing a presence. Ricardo stood at the end of the aisle, blocking the light. In his hand, he held the silver frame. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't threatening. The lack of emotion was more chilling than any rage. The final, personal confrontation was here, away from the cameras and the contracts. Just the two of them and the ghosts of the past. Miguel instinctively stepped in front of Ana, but she gently placed a hand on his arm, moving him aside. She took a step toward Ricardo, her expression unreadable. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" Ricardo's voice was hollow, broken. He held up the picture of him and his father. "You came here to destroy his name, to ruin everything he built." "No, Ricardo," Ana said, her voice steady and clear, cutting through his despair. "I came here to honor his name. You are the one who was destroying it." "You know nothing about him," Ricardo yelled, his voice cracking. "He believed in winning, in being the best. He would be ashamed of this media circus, of this foundation, of you." Ana looked at him, and for the first time a flicker of pity showed in her eyes. "You're right. I don't know the man who raised a son like you, but I knew the horseman. And that horseman, he was my student." The words hung in the air, heavier than any physical blow. Ricardo stared at her, his mind refusing to process what she'd said. "The Flores twist," Ana continued softly. "That's my family's mark. It's a secret passed down through generations. Your father saw it once, and he spent 5 years trying to learn it. He never could. He respected skill, not power. He respected guts, not shiny belt buckles." She took another step closer, her voice dropping to an intense, final whisper. This was the moment of her true revenge. "The photograph I showed you at the registration desk, the one of me and him. He gave it to me on my last day here, all those years ago. Do you know what he said? He said, 'Ana, if my boy ever loses his way, if he ever mistakes the price of things for their value, you show him this. Remind him who I was.' I didn't come here to compete against you, Ricardo. I came here to fulfill my promise to your father. I came to save his legacy from his own son." The truth finally broke through Ricardo's wall of anger and denial. It wasn't about money or fame. It was that this woman, whom he had despised and underestimated, knew his own father better than he did. She was the true heir, not of the property, but of the spirit. Ricardo's shoulders slumped. The picture frame slipped from his grasp and clattered onto the dirt floor. The fight was gone. He was utterly and completely defeated. Hannah didn't wait for Ricardo to get up. She didn't offer a hand, nor did she say another word to him. Her promise to his father was fulfilled. She gave a small, grateful nod to Miguel, turned her back on the broken man in the aisle, and walked out of the stables into the sunlight. Her steps were light. The past was finally where it belonged. The results of the World Rodeo League's investigation were quiet, but absolute. Faced with mountains of debt and a scandal he couldn't escape, Ricardo was forced to sell the rodeo. The new management, under the watchful eye of the league, promised to bring it back to the traditions it was founded on. Ricardo disappeared from the scene entirely. Months later, A rumor surfaced that he was working a low-level job at a cattle auction hundreds of miles away, stripped of his name and his pride. Anna never competed professionally again. She didn't need the trophies or the fame. Her victory was never about a single moment in the arena. The final scene of her story takes place 6 months later. On a simple, dusty ranch, the first official training ground of the Flores Foundation, Anna stands in the center of a small ring. Around her is a group of teenagers, boys and girls of all backgrounds who had the fire but lacked the opportunity. She isn't shouting orders. She is patiently showing a young girl how to hold the reins, how to feel the horse's intention. The girl looks at her with the same reverence Anna once had for the legends before her. Anna had sought one last ride for herself, but found a new purpose instead. She had discovered that the ultimate revenge against a man who had corrupted a legacy wasn't to destroy him, but to build something better in its place. She ensured that the true spirit of the rodeo wouldn't just survive, but thrive in the hands of the next generation, long after names like Ricardo were forgotten. 2 years later, the name Ana Flores was synonymous with integrity. The Flores Foundation had grown into a powerful force for good in the rodeo world, with branches in 3 different regions. Its first class of graduates were now competing and winning in rodeos across the country. They were known for their skill, their respect for the animals, and their quiet confidence. They were known as Flores Riders. Mr. Davies, the official from the World Rodeo League, sat on the foundation's board, ensuring its mission was protected at the highest levels. The rodeo that Ricardo once ran still existed, though it was a humbler version of its former self. The flashy corporate sponsors were gone, replaced by local businesses. The focus was on the sport, not the spectacle. Miguel, now the respected arena manager, made sure of it. He ran the event with the same quiet dignity that Ricardo's father once had, making it a place where skill was the only thing that mattered. The legacy had been saved. Sometimes, the foundation would receive anonymous donations, small money orders that would arrive from towns no one recognized. Anna always suspected she knew who they came from, but never said a word. There was one final story, a fleeting image seen by a traveling salesman. At a desolate truck stop diner late one night, a news report came on the small television behind the counter. It was a feature on the Flores Foundation's latest success. A man sitting alone at the counter, older than his years and with tired, hollow eyes, watched the entire segment without moving. When it was over, he paid for his coffee in cash, pulled his worn-out cap down low, and walked out into the darkness, leaving no name behind. Anna's single act of courage hadn't just settled a score. It had started a quiet revolution, proving that a legacy isn't written in stone, but is constantly being carved by those with the strength to hold the chisel. Anna's story is a powerful reminder that true strength doesn't always roar. It was a long journey of injustice, courage, and finally, a perfect and satisfying revenge. If you watched all the way to the end, show your support by commenting, "I watched until the end," down below. What did you think of Anna's unique brand of vengeance? Let us know your thoughts. Thank you for being a part of this story. The journey doesn't have to stop here. On your screen right now, you'll find another video, a story of betrayal and unexpected triumph that we know you'll love. Click on that video to continue, and we will see you there.